It's so funny.
All right, guys. This is our third video in a row, so I think we're getting less awkward here. Who knows? You guys can tell us whether or not we're less awkward. The topic for this presentation is a little bit heavier than the self-preservation one in the intro. This is about some of the basics of domestic violence, some things to be aware of, some things to think about, and some of the resources that there are here in the city of Austin. As always, if you are in a situation where you feel unsafe, you can certainly contact 911. You can also exit out of this presentation at any time and give me a call for a variety of reasons. And we can certainly talk about it. You are also more than welcome to go downstairs to management and let them know that you need some additional assistance, and they will absolutely get you in contact with me. Either by giving you my information or by giving me yours. So above all else, if you are in an unsafe situation, make sure you are doing what you can to keep yourself safe. Okay.
Yep.
That is, I think, the heart of everything we are about to talk about. And it is at the heart of why domestic violence can be really scary. So with that in mind, let's pull up this presentation. Where is it at this time? Yeah, you would think. I just did this.
View?
Prison. Yes, it is view. Nice job. Thank you. Okay, now we awkwardly sit through the loading page again. I like this. This is working out. Okay. Same thing as the last presentation, the land acknowledgement. As always, Central Texas is part of the United States. And what I think is interesting about it here is we have both Native individuals from the United States and also from Mexico who were here long before we were. There's a link at the bottom, and I'm happy to share it. And I'm happy to have any additional conversations about Native peoples who were here before, as well as Native peoples who are currently here, who do some really cool stuff kind of throughout the year. I'm always happy to have those conversations. Here's today's agenda. We're going to define domestic violence. We're going to talk about the cycle of abuse, the types of violence, domestic violence in Texas, and then there are some resources. I raise up my voice, not so that I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. We are all in this together. And finding your voice can definitely be challenging. And we are certainly here to help in any way that we can at any time, not just about this particular topic. But sometimes, I know for me, sometimes having somebody with me can make using my voice feel a little bit easier. So, domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one individual to gain or maintain control over another. Physical, sexual, emotional, economic, psychological, threat, stalking, cyber stalking. The one that always kind of sticks out to me, and I honestly have not gone through this since you made the changes, so it's going to be a fun surprise for me as we're going forward. I bet you I talk about things you have on other slides. Is the emotional one, because I think that's the one that sneaks up on people. I think the physical domestic violence we have a good idea of as a society. Clearly, somebody is physically hurting you. That's easy to identify as abuse. The emotional stuff is a lot more insidious. It's a lot stickier.
And it's hard to prove too. And
yes.
People, just because they can see the bruise or they can see it, they think it's not real.
Exactly.
So it's really hard.
Exactly. And that includes stuff like calling somebody names, right? Like terrible names, right? Not just calling somebody like stupid, like names that I right now, because I have my kids upstairs over hearing me, like I don't even want to put on the internet, but all kinds of names, and making people feel like, doing their best isn't good enough kind of constantly, right? Or every time, you're making a step in the right direction in your life, right? Putting you down or putting you back in your place, or, making previous relationships hard for you, whether relationships with family or friends, right? Kind of help like creating barriers between you and the other support people in your life so that you feel less and less connected. All of that is emotional
Would you
abuse.
consider gaslighting a type of emotional?
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about gaslighting?
Gaslighting is such a weird term because can you just explain? I know I understand it, but it's just so hard to explain.
Yes. Gaslighting is essentially where somebody tries to make you feel crazy, right? Where like Maria and I operate in kind of I don't know, I'm kind of her boss. I don't think, like, I think of it more as a partnership, but ultimately, like, I've been working as a social worker for a long time. Maria is learning how to be a social worker, right? And so in that relationship, there's an inherent like power kind of dynamic here, that it exists, right? I can acknowledge it. It is what it is. It doesn't mean that I think that I'm better than she is or anything crazy like that. But I mean, if I were to go to her and basically, I'm trying to think of a good example. If I were to say something like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't understand what that meant," or my gosh, now I'm blanking on them. If I were to rewrite history, people who rewrite history, that's not what happened. That's not what you said. I didn't take that from you. You did that to me. That kind of stuff is gaslighting, and it makes you question your beliefs, your memories,
your reality, or
like, and as a student, right, like, it's stuff like I could do, I don't even know, like, there's so many ways that teachers do it to students all the time. It's interesting because I'm seriously sitting here trying to think of an example, but it is so out of like my character. But if I were to go, "Oh, don't you remember you said you were going to do that?"
Yeah.
Right. Or stuff like that. Right. It's interesting. And I definitely encourage, if you are in a situation where you feel like somebody is making you question like your immediate reality, like please, like, you can look up gaslighting. You are also welcome to reach out and we can talk more about it. It is insidious. And insidious is just this notion that it's there before you realize how bad it is. That's all I mean by that word. It sneaks up on you. It's gradual, right? Over time, it kind of chips away at your sense of self and your sense of, I see this a lot with like moms. Like, you're not doing enough, right? Like, my husband and I used to talk about this when he would take the kids to the park and they didn't have shoes. And I was like, he has to wear shoes. And he's like, why does it matter? And I'm like, it matters because other people there are going to look at me and judge me for not having shoes on my kid. Right. But they don't look at him at the same way. Right. And so I think moms deal with this a lot. Well, why didn't you feed them something healthier? Why don't they have any vegetables? Like, don't you know that you're supposed to do this? Don't you know that when the water goes out, you need to fill your bathtub with water, or if it's going to snow, you need to fill your gas tank? And it's like, well, obviously I did not know that. Otherwise I would have done that thing. But when a person in power is saying those things to you, a boss, a teacher, a partner, even a friend is doing that stuff, is saying that kind of thing to you, they're not actually thinking about how you're feeling. They're thinking about how they would handle it if they had time to sit there and think it through. Right now, how you're necessarily handling a crisis.
To maintain control.
Exactly.
That's like the main purpose.
Exactly. So cycle of abuse. So we're going to go over this pretty briefly. Because there's a lot of stuff here, and I can probably sit here and like have a 6-hour lecture on the cycle of abuse. It is definitely worth looking up and reading more about it if you have any questions. But step one is always the kind of increased tension in a relationship. This can be somebody getting more tense, right? It can be everything is fine one day, and then over the course of a couple of weeks, you're being yelled at for not cleaning up enough, or for, the kids having a slightly dirty face after they eat, right? Every little thing starts getting kind of nitpicked. And as time goes on, it gets worse and worse and worse. And there's fewer and fewer breaks in between kind of the nitpicking. I think I'm just going to stick with that word. It works.
Yeah, I like it.
And the person who is on the receiving end, so the person who is being kind of talked down to in that moment, over time, they're just kind of, okay, well, how can I make this better? What can I do? What did I do wrong? Right. The word placate just means trying to make it better, just trying to like, you just want to make the peace, right? Like, I want Maria to stop doing this thing to me. So I will do anything in my power to make her stop. Right. I will just sit there. And if she wants to yell at me, she can just yell at me. I'm just going to let it happen.
Wow.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything, right? If she doesn't want me making eye contact, I'm not going to look at her, right? That kind of thing. Like you're just responding to all of those criticisms over time, and you're just kind of taking that stuff in, and then just really trying to de-escalate the situation by doing whatever is necessary. And then something happens, right? Something happens, verbal, emotional, or physical abuse. It can be breaking stuff in your house. It can be, tirades with names being called and terrible, terrible things being said. It can be punching, tasing, hitting, kicking out,
Making fun of people.
Yes. It can be threatening to take away access to a bank account, right? It can be just about anything, but something happens, right? There's a moment of fear. Threats, intimidation. I'm going to do this to you if you do this again. Intimidation is just, especially when your partner is bigger than you are, just physically bigger, getting in your space, right? And just kind of being right in your face and trying to make you feel like you are unsafe through the use of their body, right? Because it is potentially bigger and stronger. And that's not always the case either. That's just an example. Reconciliation. So after this event happens, the person who did it comes to you and, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm never, ever going to do that to you again. I had a bad day at work. I was just frustrated. You made me do it, right? Like you kind of pushed me over the edge. It wasn't really that bad. You didn't really have a black eye.
And that's kind of like gaslighting too,
That
right?
is absolutely. And that is a very good example of rewriting the reality, rewriting history. I didn't call you that. I would never call you that. Of course you can have access to our bank account, right? That kind of stuff.
You're making things bigger than they actually are.
Exactly. Rewriting history is kind of the theme, I think, here, right? Just kind of just making you question everything you thought you remember. And then there's the calm. And I like that in this example, it's called the calm as like the title instead of the honeymoon phase. But this is just where, the person who was abusive, right? Who had like this abusive incident, they are making it up, right? They're going to bring flowers. They're going to, they're going to help with the dishes again. They're going to be more helpful than usual, right? And everything goes along, right? And it's easy to believe that things are getting better. And then eventually tensions start occurring again. So the difference between a cycle of abuse and kind of just like, I think a typical relationship, and typical is the wrong word there, but most I don't even know. Like the difference between the cycle of abuse and a fight is that the cycle of abuse never really ends, right? And so after that calm happens, tensions start building up again, and then you end up in these incidents that are similar to the last time or worse, right? Because they tend to worsen over time. And the apologies during that reconciliation phase, they're not actually making steps to make changes, right? So in some relationships where there isn't a cycle of abuse, when you get to that reconciliation phase, there are apologies and acknowledgement that what they did is what they did, right? So yes, I did this thing. I am going to not do this thing in the future. I'm going to go to therapy, right? I'm going to talk to my friends. I'm going to, the next time I'm feeling angry like that, I'm going to ask to take a drive, or I'm going to ask to leave the house, right? There is a plan. There is an actual apology, an apology that the next time that maybe, you're having a bad day, or like the fights start, or like the tensions start increasing, you can remind them of those plans and say, hey, last time you were struggling like this, you said you wanted to watch a movie. Would you like to watch a movie right now? Like, how can I help you? Right. And there's this give and take, right? Like there's an active attempt by the person who is kind of inciting these incidents to make a change in their behavior. When the tensions are escalated, when incidents are happening, right? Not during the honeymoon phase when they're making all of these apologies and promises that they're never ever going to do it again. And there's absolutely a lot more to unpack there. There's more to talk about there.
Yeah,
So if this is something that you may be experiencing and you're unsure about, feel free to reach out. If you don't feel like you can talk to me because I work, for Think East, that is absolutely your choice, and I completely understand. And I'm always happy to refer you out to other places that can maybe have these conversations. And if you feel more comfortable with that, that is fine too. But if it is something that you are questioning after having heard just a very brief explanation, please feel free to do more research on it. Please feel free to reach out to me or to any of the other resources that I can either provide or that are here later in this presentation. So there are 9 types of violence, and they all kind of follow that same path, right? Because it is all about power and control, right? It's all about one person being able to say what goes, kind of to an extreme, right? Controlling every aspect of somebody else's life. Physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, spiritual, cultural, verbal, financial, and neglect. Cultural violence is interesting and definitely different, and not something that I would have, if I were asked to give a whole list of examples, that is not something that would have popped onto my radar initially. But I'm glad that it's here, because here I think we do have a lot of people from different backgrounds. And it is absolutely worth keeping that in mind. But definitely look through this, read through it. If you want this chart, I'm also happy to share that. Oh yeah, if you guys just want a whole copy of the presentation, feel free to let us know and I can send that along. These are just some basic statistics on domestic violence. So like I said at the very beginning when we started, domestic violence is scary and it escalates. It can escalate. It tends to escalate over time. So at the end of the day, it's all about making sure that you are safe and that you feel safe. Please feel free to look through these statistics and
just to normalize the experience, because a lot of people are going through domestic violence, and here are the numbers that says that that it's going on, that it's a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And these numbers are also probably low. People tend, there are people either hesitate from reporting domestic violence or don't realize it's what they're experiencing. Right, especially with emotional and some of the cultural and spiritual stuff, because it's not traditional.
Well, you can see it. You cannot see a bruise in your soul.
Exactly. Bruise in your soul. I like that. Just some more basic information about it. And this is not gender specific. While it does tend to be directed toward women, that is also not the truth. And that tendency is potentially misrepresented, right? If men aren't reporting, men are less likely to report this kind of thing. Yeah. So just something to keep in mind.
Can happen to anyone.
Yeah. Definitely take all of this with a grain of salt. I want to tell people that family violence happens to anybody, no matter how nice your house is, no matter how intelligent you are. Family violence and domestic violence doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, right? Like Maria said a second ago, part of the reason the statistics are here is to help acknowledge that this is a wide-ranging problem. It's a subject that is often hidden and very secretive, but it is something I feel should have a light shone upon it. Absolutely. If we never talk about it, it never gets any better. It just stays in the dark.
Exactly.
Some basic resources, YMCA, only for women. Safe Alliance, which is actually pretty close to you guys. It's just a few miles down the road. They have amazing resources for, I think, mostly women, but I think also men if needed. If you or anybody you know is a victim of domestic violence, please visit. And here's a hotline number and email address, or not email address, a website.
There's more resources at the office. So if you feel like if you feel like you're scared because you don't want like your partner, somebody sticking your phone or like checking your text messages or like your call logs or something like that, there's like more resources at the front office. You can just ask for them and then give those a call or give Ryann a call and then we'll help you get linked to anything that you need.
Absolutely. And zero judgment, right? Like absolutely zero judgment. We all go through things, and it can be hard to ask for help. It can be hard to realize you need help sometimes. It can also just be like hard to figure out where to start.
Yeah.
And this presentation, this series of resources right here, like Maria said, it's a step, right? It is one of many. There are many options. Here's my information again. So feel free to reach out with any questions you may have about yourself or about anybody else. I'm a licensed social worker and always trying to make sure that if my name or number gets passed on to anybody who may need a little bit of guidance, I'm always happy to pass resources on to them. And I just want to say thank you guys for watching through our video, and I hope we were able to maybe answer some early questions, initial questions. It feels like a whole lot of talking on our end right now, just because it's not a lot of conversation, because unfortunately you guys aren't part of this video today. But if you do have any questions, comment below, contact me in one of the many ways you can. My contact information will be in the description as well. And just stay safe, okay? We are always here to help people manage safety and manage figuring out whatever step one is. Step one is the hardest. It doesn't matter if it's domestic violence or drugs or mental health or financial resources. Step one is the hardest. It's hardest to figure out how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And once you're on that path, all the other steps become easier. And we just want to let you guys know that you're not alone in this. And we will have a presentation later on about anger management and some of the resources that are there for that. We recognize that this is a twofold issue, and that issues like domestic violence are not always resolved by just walking away. We realize that's not always what people want. And we are willing to listen and hear whatever you may have to say, whatever is in your heart to say, okay? So I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I look forward to hearing your suggestions about this video, about this presentation, what you feel we were missing, what you feel we should add or take away maybe. Whatever is in your heart to share, please feel free to share. We are always all ears, okay? Have a wonderful day, guys.
Thank you.